Woodcuts. The tradition of woodcuts dates well back into the Middle Ages, before canvases could be stretched, before pictures could be snapped, when even the lack of proper brushes made painting with the finger and colored clays the only route, and so the shapes of people and events were fashioned in polished bits of wood, which was then very plentiful, most of Europe being then primeval forest. This particular woodcut depicts the Queen of the Gauls, Santana, accompanied by four Pans, the wood nymphs of the forest. Pans were half men, half fauns. Santana has one nipple wrongly exposed, reflecting the amateur nature of the art, and therein lies the British Museum's grievous fault in displaying this. But never mind. Note how two of the Pans flank the Queen, and these two Pans are raising trumpets made of branches, and on each trumpet sits a bird, and over each final bough of each trumpet there are draped small rugs or tapestry, and one tapestry is red and one is blue. This all taken together, it hits you. It really hits you how in those days those people thought about entirely different things than we do today. This wooden replica of the Tower of Babel is also an illustrated wordless book about the Tower of Babel. On the bottom level or floor of the structure of the tower is the actual tower itself, and in its inception, just after its construction, and to represent its early ages, there are young children from many different lands, talking and getting along. Then the second level and the tower becomes a small book, and the populace of the tower has increased dramatically, and there are many different men and women from many different lands talking and getting along and negotiating. And then in the third story of the tower, which is also a great tome, the tower has become crowded and is about to be destroyed. This wood carving would seem to be a melodramatic mess at first gasp, and so the British Museum's bad taste would seem to be represented here. And yet, because the carving slash sculpture is meta-literary of a sense, it discusses itself in the form of a book, in other words, it slips out of the British Museum's grasp of moronic and childish things and becomes an important artwork and well worth a view. So should you be so unlucky as to spend a sunny day inside the British Museum, see it. Unfortunate, though, as well, it must be mentioned, is that it's kept beneath a glass case and out of human reach because the wood is likely incredibly smooth to the touch. And there rides Neptune on a wave of horses. Now, how courageous is the British Museum? How much cheek does the British Museum maintain? How haughty and cocky is the British Museum? Well, this documentarian needs only say that it takes an unfathomable amount of gall to be so careless with the bust of Tutankhamun, King Tut himself. Here, though, not only has the British Museum allowed the nose of the bust to be broken, it has also suffered the loss of its dignity through the loss of its braided Egyptian beard, much the same as stripping a Jewish statue of its yarmulke, or stripping a Christian statue of its crucifix, or stripping an Oriental statue of its ancestral ghosts. There is also a bit of the crown scarred away, and yet the British Museum sets this statue, along with the aforementioned baboon statue, facing right in the entry to the first hall of the museum. Curiously, a rumor has arisen among archaeologists, and this is only rumor and conjecture, but there is apparently evidence to confirm that all of the original archaeologists who died when Tutankhamun was originally dug up died as a result of quote-unquote the curse were actually only the second-tier archaeologists, and that all the top-level archaeologists, or in other words, the archaeologists who were also seniors in the British Museum's board of directors, as well as members of the Illuminati/Freemasons, these archaeologists never suffered death, and never suffered in any accursed fashion, leading contemporary archaeologists to speculate that the so-called curse, quote-unquote, was only a family plot by the Illuminati to set up a rumor of a curse to blind the public with fairy tales while the loot was being carried from Tutankhamun's tomb, as it were, or whether the Illuminati and Freemasons themselves were evil enough to possess magical powers to lay curses, and were at the time weeding out their underlings and servants they didn't particularly care for. The dish that poisoned Alexander. When Oliver Stone was struggling to help his film Alexander become a hit at the worldwide box office in 1997, he truly didn't know the forces arranged against him. He had already caused a stir of course among the Freemasons and Illuminati with his controversial portrayals of the Presidents Kennedy and Nixon. So when asking to borrow the dish that poisoned Alexander from the British Museum, he was actually only asking the Freemasons/Illuminati to notice what movie he was making next, so they could handily sabotage it and make it the flop it turned out to be. Anyhow, this is indeed the dish upon which was served the food which in turn poisoned Alexander the Great on his eve of the conquest of the Persian army. According to scholars, Alexander the Great sat down to supper with this dish, of course piled high with peppers and rice, and over the rice was sprinkled a strange new quote-unquote spice said by his deadly server to be from the East, but no, 'twas poison, and within a month Alexander the Great was laid on a funeral bier, and pushed out to sea, burning, burning, burning to a cinder, his bones and flesh burning